Marissa Doyle stood at the edge of the cruise ship deck, the salty breeze brushing through her auburn hair as she watched the late afternoon sun sink into the horizon. It was supposed to be the highlight of their summer, a much-needed vacation for her and her twin daughters, Eliza and Rowan, both 9 years old. As a single mother working 2 jobs in Boulder, Colorado, Marissa had spent nearly a year saving up for this trip, hoping it would bring joy and rest to their hectic lives. The cruise, departing from Galveston and circling the Gulf of Mexico, was her gift to them after a difficult school year marked by late-night homework, scraped knees, and lonely dinners. On the 4th day of the cruise, the trio had spent hours by the pool. The girls loved the colorful water slides and squealed with delight every time they splashed into the water. They had just finished a light lunch at one of the buffet restaurants on Deck 12, where Eliza had insisted on getting 2 servings of pineapple, and Rowan had quietly stacked French fries on her plate while humming under her breath. Around 3:30 p.m., the sun was still bright but not blistering. Marissa's phone vibrated. It was a call from her supervisor at the community college where she taught part-time. Normally, she wouldn't answer work calls on vacation, but the signal was weak, and she knew the campus was finalizing fall enrollment. "Girls," she said, "I just need to step out for a moment to take this call. Stay right here. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back in 5 minutes." Both daughters nodded, Eliza giving a dramatic salute, while Rowan, always more reserved, gave a small smile. Marissa walked outside the restaurant to the hallway near the elevators, where the reception was slightly better. She kept the conversation brief, trying not to let work intrude too much on their trip. When she returned, the girls were gone. At first, Marissa wasn't alarmed. Perhaps they had gone to refill their drinks or to the restroom. She checked both. Nothing. She walked around the dining area. Still no sign. A small twinge of panic flickered in her chest. She asked a server, then 2 others, had they seen 2 red-haired girls, about 9 years old, wearing matching teal swimsuits? One of them thought they saw them leaving the restaurant, but didn't remember where they went. Marissa's heart began to pound as she widened her search radius. She called their names. No answer. The ship was massive, a floating city with thousands of passengers. The next hour passed in a blur of frantic steps, breathless questions, and rising dread. By the time she reached the security office, tears were running down her face. Ship security initiated protocol. Announcements were made, crew were dispatched, surveillance footage reviewed. The footage showed the twins sitting poolside earlier, giggling during a magician's performance. But the moment the show ended and the crowd dispersed, the girls vanished. No further footage showed where they had gone. The ship conducted a full search, checking every cabin, every corridor, every public space. The girls were not found. After 24 hours, with no new leads, the ship's flag state was notified. The Coast Guard and FBI joined the case once the ship returned to port in Mobile, Alabama. Passengers were held for questioning. The ship's manifest was scrutinized. But despite the exhaustive efforts, Eliza and Rowan Doyle were officially declared missing. Marissa returned to Boulder without her daughters, clutching their favorite stuffed animals in her lap as the plane descended. She had aged a decade in a matter of days. Her once lively eyes were now sunken and shadowed by sleepless nights. Her home, once filled with laughter and chaos, became a shrine to silence. Their room remained untouched, 2 twin beds with matching blankets frozen in time. Flyers were printed. Interviews were given. Every tip led nowhere. 10 months passed, and not a single credible lead surfaced. Marissa began each day with the same ritual reviewing case notes, calling the detective assigned to their case, and refreshing message boards for parents of missing children. People told her to rest, to accept what had happened, to move forward. But how could she? Her daughters had vanished into thin air, no blood, no witness, no explanation. The emptiness was unbearable. Until the phone rang that morning. Marissa Doyle sat in the dim light of her living room, surrounded by evidence of a search that had consumed her life. Posters of her daughters, once vibrant and hopeful, now bore the wear of time, curled edges, sun-faded faces, and tear-stained corners. Stacks of case files filled her desk, alongside notes she had scribbled in sleepless nights. Every tip, every dead end was documented, highlighted, reanalyzed. 10 months had passed since Eliza and Rowan vanished on that cruise ship, and not a day had gone by that Marissa hadn't relived that moment she stepped out the dining area. Those 5 minutes that changed everything. The walls of her home in Boulder had grown claustrophobic, yet she refused to leave. It felt like abandonment, like surrender. She often sat with unopened sympathy cards by her side, unable to bear the finality they implied. That morning, as the first rays of Colorado sunlight slipped through the blinds she hadn't adjusted in weeks, Marissa stared at a case file she'd read dozens of times before. It was the report detailing the exact timeline from the cruise. 3:31 p.m. She left the girls. 3:36 p.m. A server recalled them leaving their table. 3:42 p.m. CCTV lost sight of them. She had committed these times to memory. She was reaching for the first envelope in the stack of sympathy cards when her phone rang. Her heart jumped. The screen read, "Detective Mason Alvarez." "Detective," she answered, her voice immediately taut with hope and dread. "Any news?" She braced for the usual another dead lead, a vague sighting, a well-meaning false report. But Alvarez's tone was different. It was clipped, focused, with an undertone she had never heard before. "Marissa, I just got a call from the local police on Ocracoke Island, North Carolina. A fisherman found a suitcase washed up on shore. It contained remains of a child." The world seemed to tilt. Marissa's grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles whitened. "What?" she whispered. "We need you to fly with me to North Carolina. The suitcase also had some personal items, things we need you to identify," Alvarez continued gently. "I'll pick you up in an hour." The call ended, and Marissa sat frozen for a moment. Then tears spilled freely as she moved mechanically to pack a bag. Her thoughts spiraled, memories from the cruise flooding her. The girls laughing in the pool, Eliza's love for pineapple, Rowan's shy smiles. She could still hear their voices echoing off the ship's walls. As she zipped up her bag, her body trembled. This was the first sign in 10 months. Hope and horror twisted inside her. She barely noticed the passage of time before the knock came. At the door stood Detective Alvarez, dressed in plain clothes, his expression solemn but composed. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. Marissa nodded, locking her front door with trembling hands. They drove in silence to the airport. The flight to the coast was quiet, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Alvarez reviewed his notes on a tablet, occasionally glancing at Marissa, who stared blankly out the window. When they landed, a local officer escorted them to a modest sheriff's substation near the shoreline. It was a single-story brick building surrounded by pine trees swaying in the salt air. "The evidence from Ocracoke is being processed here," Alvarez explained as they entered. Inside, the scent of antiseptic was strong. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A deputy led them through a maze of halls to a back room. "Before we enter," Alvarez said, placing a gentle hand on Marissa's arm, "you need to prepare yourself. It's going to be hard." She nodded, unable to speak. They donned sterile gowns and masks before stepping into the room. A weathered man stood by the far wall, his skin darkened by years in the sun. "Mrs. Doyle," the sheriff introduced him. "This is Curtis Bannister, the fisherman who found the suitcase." Bannister stepped forward, voice gravelly. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I wish I'd found anything else." Marissa nodded numbly. Her attention shifted to the stainless steel table in the center of the room. On it sat a medium-sized suitcase, faded from its original blue to a sun-bleached gray. Its seams were warped and swollen. A medical examiner stood nearby, gloved hands resting gently at his sides. "Mrs. Doyle," he began. "Everything inside was cataloged as found. I'll show you now." Marissa braced herself against the counter as he slowly opened the lid. A sharp gasp escaped her lips. Inside were the remains of a small child, bloated, discolored, partially skeletonized. But something else caught her eyes: a faded red Minnie Mouse t-shirt and a pair of swim goggles. Her breath caught. "That's Eliza's shirt," she whispered, tears flowing. "And her goggles. They had initials on them. Hers had E. Rowan's had ARD." The examiner nodded. "We'd like your permission to collect a DNA sample, but based on these personal effects, we believe it is indeed Eliza." "Of course," Marissa said numbly. "But I don't need DNA to know. That's my daughter." Alvarez placed a hand on her shoulder as the examiner produced another bag. There was one more item, something that doesn't belong to a child. Inside the bag was a silver Zippo lighter, tarnished by seawater. It bore engraved initials. Marissa stared at it. "That's not theirs," she said. "They were 9. They didn't own anything like that." "It's our first potential lead," Alvarez noted. "It might help us find out who did this." Marissa turned to Bannister. "Can you tell me exactly where you found it?" Bannister nodded. "Near my home, walking the beach like I do every morning. Saw something in the surf. Smelled something foul. Opened it just enough, called the police." "Was there anything else?" Marissa asked. "Any sign of Rowan?" Bannister shook his head sadly. "Just the suitcase." She turned to Alvarez, voice trembling. "Why would someone put her in a suitcase and throw her in the ocean? Why not something that sinks?" "The suitcase floats if not weighted down," the sheriff answered. "It may not have been meant to be found." "What now?" Marissa asked. "We're treating this as a homicide now," Alvarez said. "We'll trace the suitcase model, track the lighter, and revisit all cruise records." Marissa's eyes lingered on the sticker beneath the lighter. "That logo looks familiar," she murmured. "Can I take pictures?" "Of course," the sheriff said. "We'll send you digital copies too." Marissa photographed everything as Alvarez continued planning. "We'll map the ship's path with ocean current data and see where the suitcase could have been dropped." The sheriff added, "We've started DNA testing, and we'll need you to remain in the area." "I want to see the beach where she was found," Marissa said. "I need to." Alvarez hesitated, then agreed. "I'll come with you." "I'll take you," Bannister offered. "My boat's docked nearby." Marissa looked at him. Her grief mingled with resolve. "Thank you." The boat ride to Ocracoke Island took just under an hour, and the sea stretched out around them like a vast, indifferent witness. Marissa sat near the bow, staring into the spray, her hair whipping in the wind. The sound of the waves slapping against the hull was rhythmic, almost hypnotic, but her thoughts raced too loudly for the ocean to soothe. Curtis Bannister, the fisherman who had found the suitcase, handled the boat with practiced ease. Detective Alvarez sat nearby, flipping through case notes on his tablet, but keeping a watchful eye on Marissa, occasionally exchanging glances with Bannister. The closer they got to the beach, the more the sky seemed to shift blue and gold, giving way to a deeper gray, as if the air itself braced for the memories about to surface. "It's just up ahead," Bannister called over the engine's hum, pointing to a quiet stretch of sand. Marissa looked up and saw yellow police tape fluttering in the wind, cordoning off an area where officers still moved about with slow, methodical purpose. A news van idled on a nearby access road, a reporter and a cameraman observing from a respectful distance. Bannister brought the boat alongside a weathered wooden dock. He stepped out first, then offered a hand to help Marissa and Alvarez disembark. The three made their way down the dock, feet echoing softly against the planks. The sand was cool underfoot, a strange contrast to the heavy sun overhead. As they approached the cordoned-off zone, a uniformed officer lifted the tape for them. "Mrs. Doyle," the officer said solemnly, "we're deeply sorry for your loss." Marissa gave a small, wordless nod. Her eyes were fixed on the faint depression in the sand where the suitcase had been found. Though the object itself was now locked in a sterile lab room, the outline remained. She knelt beside it, fingers brushing the edge of the indentation. The sand was damp and fine, slipping between her fingers. "This is where she washed up," Bannister said gently, stopping at the edge of the mark. "The tide was going out. I nearly stepped on it. Looked like nothing special at first. Then the smell hit me." Marissa's jaw clenched. "There has to be more," she murmured, scooping sand, examining it, searching as if a clue might still be buried. "Something else that tells me where Rowan is." Detective Alvarez knelt beside her. "Our forensic team combed every inch," he said gently. "We'll go over it again, but this is the most significant lead we've had in 10 months. We'll find her." A few feet away, the reporter had spotted them and was signaling to her cameraman. Alvarez stood, frowning. "I'll handle the press," he said, heading over. Bannister remained by Marissa's side. "There's a small cabin resort just past those dunes," he said, gesturing inland. "Not many people there this time of year. Quiet place. I can arrange for you to stay the night if you'd prefer not to leave the island." Marissa wiped her eyes and rose to her feet. "Thank you. I'd like that. I don't want to leave yet." Bannister nodded understandingly. "When my son disappeared in a boating accident 5 years ago, I stayed at the marina for weeks. Sometimes being near the last place helps." Marissa turned to him, her expression softening. "Did they ever find him?" Bannister shook his head. "No, but I know where to go when I want to talk to him." As Alvarez returned, Marissa shared her decision to stay the night. The detective agreed. "I'll assign Officer Reyes to stay with you. Just as a precaution," he said. "Until we know more, we need to be cautious." They walked back toward the cabins, a cluster of modest beachfront structures weathered by salt and sun. The owner, a man named Greg Harrison, met them at the edge of the property. He expressed his condolences and assured Marissa she'd have privacy. "It's not tourist season yet," he explained as he led them to her assigned cabin. "You'll have all the quiet you need." The cabin was simple one room with a queen bed, a kitchenette, and a small bathroom. But it was clean and inviting. On the porch, 2 Adirondack chairs faced the sea. Officer Reyes positioned herself outside, giving Marissa space while maintaining a protective presence. A young woman who worked at the resort brought Marissa a mug of coffee. "Welcome drink on the house," she said softly. "I'm so sorry about your daughter." Marissa took the mug with murmured thanks and sat on the porch, watching the surf roll in and out like the breath of the earth itself. The sky was streaked with amber and mauve as the sun dipped low. Just as she took a sip, something across the way caught her eye. A man emerged from the cabin opposite hers. He was checking his pockets, patting himself down as if to ensure he hadn't forgotten anything. He set a duffel bag on the small table outside before locking his cabin and heading toward the office. Marissa's gaze drifted to what he had left behind, a small metallic object on the table, glinting in the fading light. Curiosity prickled her spine. She walked over, drawn by a gut instinct she couldn't explain. On the table lay a cigarette pack and a lighter. She picked up the lighter and turned it over in her hand. Her breath caught. The sticker on the bottom bore the same store logo as the one on the evidence, lighter, the one found in Eliza's suitcase. Her pulse surged. She glanced toward the office where the man was just entering. Without thinking, she hurried after him. "Excuse me," she called. The man turned, surprised. He smiled politely. "You forgot this," Marissa said, holding out the lighter. "Oh man, thanks," he said, taking it. "Would have missed that for sure." "If you don't mind," she asked, "where did you get this?" "I collect vintage lighters. This one's familiar." "A little place in Greenville," he said. "Carnes Corner News. Old guy runs it. Sells all kinds of weird stuff." Marissa's breath hitched. "Does it have a name?" "That's it. Carnes Corner. You from Greenville?" "No," she said carefully. "But there's a similar shop in Boulder." Before the man could say more, a resort staff member approached carrying a suitcase. "Sir, you left this in your room," he said. Marissa turned and stared. The suitcase was nearly identical to the one Eliza had been found in. "Where did you get that?" she asked quickly. The man shrugged. "Same place. Got it for cheap with the lighter. Thing's junk though. Handle's already busted." "Would you mind if I kept it?" Marissa asked. "I know it's strange." "Be my guest," he said. "Save me from throwing it out." "What's your name?" she asked. "Jeff Thornton," he replied. "Why?" Marissa hesitated. "I'm here with the police. My daughters went missing last year. One of them was found in a suitcase just like this." Thornton paled. "God, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "If I can help—" "Thank you," Marissa said. "You already have." As Thornton walked away, Marissa returned to her cabin, suitcase in hand, her mind spinning. Officer Reyes watched her but said nothing. Inside, Marissa picked up her phone and dialed Alvarez. "I need you to see something," she said. "It's about the lighter and the suitcase. I think we found our next lead." 15 minutes later, Marissa stood at the shoreline with Officer Reyes beside her, watching as Detective Alvarez stepped out of a police vehicle parked near the cabin resort. Curtis Bannister had apparently returned with him, offering his continued help. Alvarez's expression was taut with urgency. As he reached them, he skipped the usual pleasantries. "Show me what you found," he said. Marissa led them inside her cabin. On the table sat the broken suitcase, almost identical to the one found with Eliza's remains. Next to it was the lighter, the same logo sticker still visible on the bottom. "Jeff Thornton," she said, "the man in the opposite cabin, said he bought both items at a kiosk in Greenville called Carnes Corner News." Alvarez leaned in, examining the sticker. "Carnes," he repeated, voice tightening. He pulled out his radio and stepped just outside the door. "Dispatch, I need a full workup on a business called Carnes Corner News in Greenville, owner's name, address, business history, everything." Inside, Marissa paced. The adrenaline had not worn off. Her fingers trembled slightly as she traced the edge of the suitcase. "He said the owner is an older guy," she recalled aloud, "always has strange items, odd sales, not a regular chain store." Within minutes, Alvarez's radio crackled. "Detective Alvarez, we've got that info. Business registered to Douglas Carnes, 57 years old. 3 locations, main one in Greenville, a second in Charlotte, and a third opening next month in Virginia Beach. Sending addresses now." Alvarez's eyes flicked to his phone as the addresses came in. "We've still got daylight," he said. "Let's go check it out." Officer Reyes stayed behind to watch the area, while Alvarez, Bannister, and Marissa boarded the police boat and returned to the mainland. The ride was faster this time, driven by urgency. Once ashore, Alvarez requisitioned a police vehicle. They drove directly to the Greenville Strip Mall, where Carnes Corner News was located, a small standalone kiosk near the edge of the parking lot. It looked unremarkable, with faded signage, dusty windows, and a spinning rack of postcards just outside the door. Inside, a thin man in his 30s stood behind the counter arranging a display of cigarette packs. He looked up as they entered, his expression guarded. "Can I help you?" he asked. "We're closing soon." Alvarez stepped forward, badge out. "Detective Alvarez, Virginia State Police. Are you the owner of this business?" The man shook his head quickly. "No, sir. I just work here. Mr. Carnes is the owner." "Is he here?" Alvarez asked. "No," the man replied. "He splits his time between locations. Usually pops in once a week or so." "Do you have contact info for him?" The clerk hesitated, then ducked below the counter and returned with a slightly wrinkled business card. "This has his number and mailing address," he said. Alvarez took it, glancing at the phone number. Marissa stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Do you sell Zippo lighters here?" The clerk nodded, gesturing to a glass display case near the register. "Right here. All styles." Marissa looked. They were the same brand and model. Alvarez showed the clerk a photo on his phone of the tarnished lighter with the initials K. "Have you seen this exact model before?" The clerk squinted. "Could be ours. We sell a lot, and customers sometimes get them engraved after buying." "Do you sell suitcases?" Marissa asked. The man looked confused. "No, ma'am. We're a newsstand, not a luggage shop." "Thornton said he bought this suitcase here," she pressed. "Maybe Mr. Carnes sold him one of his own items." The clerk shrugged. "He brings in weird stuff, sometimes old radios, typewriters, army gear. I don't ask." "Thanks," Alvarez said. "And if Mr. Carnes shows up, don't tell him we were here. This is an active investigation." Back in the car, Marissa stared out the window. "Let's drive by his home," she said. "See if anything looks wrong." Alvarez agreed. "We can do a pass, but we don't have a warrant to enter." They drove to a quiet residential neighborhood, each house modest, with tidy lawns. Carnes's house was a pale yellow bungalow with white trim. A car sat in the driveway, partially obscured by a large tree. "Look," Marissa said suddenly, pointing. "The license plate first letters are DK, last two are K." Alvarez narrowed his eyes. "Interesting. But DK could just be initials, and K might be coincidental." They waited for a few minutes. No movement. No lights. "Let's head back," Alvarez decided. "We'll coordinate with local authorities. If he's involved, we need a search warrant built on solid evidence." Marissa nodded. "Could you drop me at the ferry? I'll go back to the cabin for the night." Alvarez frowned. "I'd rather you didn't take the public ferry. Officer Reyes can bring you back by police boat. It's safer." As they approached the harbor, Marissa stiffened. "That car," she said sharply, pointing to a vehicle in the ferry queue. "Ça me plate." Alvarez followed her gaze. Through the tinted back window, they could just make out figures, an adult and what appeared to be a child. "Let's not jump to conclusions," Alvarez warned. "It could be anyone." But Marissa was already moving. "I just want to see who's inside," she called back. "Rachel, wait," Alvarez said, catching up to her. But she had already reached the ferry ticketing officer. The car rolled forward. The driver handed over tickets. In the back seat, a child squirmed in the grip of a woman's arm. Marissa caught a brief glimpse, dark blonde hair, familiar profile. Her heart leapt. "Rowan," she whispered. "That's Rowan." Alvarez reached her side. "You can't approach them. We need confirmation." "It's her," Marissa insisted. "I know it is." Alvarez signaled to the ticketing officer. "Do a secondary check on that vehicle." The car was motioned aside. As soon as it stopped, the doors flew open. A man in his 50s bolted from the driver's seat, and a woman yanked the child from the back. "That's them," Marissa cried. "That's really them." The trio darted through the lot. Alvarez shouted, "Police!" "Stop," as he radioed backup. The area erupted in chaos. Ferry staff moved quickly to clear civilians. Police cruisers arrived, blocking exits. The man reached the fence, tried to scale it, and was tackled. The woman, still gripping the child's arm, ducked behind cars but was surrounded. "Let go of the girl," an officer ordered. She did. The child broke free. She looked around wildly, then her eyes locked onto Marissa. "Mom," she screamed. "Mom." Marissa broke free from Officer Reyes and sprinted toward her. They collided halfway across the lot. "Rowan," Marissa cried, dropping to her knees. She wrapped her daughter in her arms, sobbing. "Oh my God!" "Rowan." The girl clung to her mother, her thin frame shaking, her cries muffled against Marissa's shoulder. Alvarez approached slowly, eyes on the suspects being handcuffed and led away. "We've got them," he said. "Both in custody." Marissa held her daughter tighter. "Who are they?" "Douglas Carnes and Kathy Evans. Husband and wife," Alvarez replied. "K," Marissa whispered. "The initials on the lighter." "Exactly." Alvarez nodded grimly. "Their cars being searched now. There's more suitcases, syringes. We'll know soon." But all Marissa could focus on was Rowan's trembling hand in hers. Paramedics arrived within minutes, their flashing lights bathing the scene in red and blue as officers worked to secure the suspects. Rowan clung to her mother, refusing to release her grip even as the medics gently approached with a stretcher and a first aid kit. "We need to check her for injuries," one of them said softly, kneeling beside Marissa. The girl flinched as they reached out. "Please don't take more pictures," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Marissa looked up sharply. The medic gave a solemn nod and pulled back, addressing her gently. "We'll keep everything minimal. But she needs evaluation. There's evidence of malnutrition, and we believe she's been sedated." Alvarez stepped away from the cruiser where Carnes had just been secured and approached, crouching beside them. "We found syringes in the back seat," he said quietly. "We believe they planned to sedate her again before the ferry crossing." Marissa's jaw clenched in fury, but she focused on her daughter. "You're safe now," she whispered. "They can't hurt you anymore." Rowan's small frame was trembling, her eyes glassy and disoriented. She looked up, her expression dazed. "They told me if I screamed, they'd hurt you," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't know if you were alive." "I never stopped looking for you," Marissa replied, brushing hair from her daughter's face. "I promised I would find you." The paramedics carefully lifted Rowan onto the stretcher, Marissa's hand never leaving hers. As they wheeled her to the ambulance, Alvarez stepped beside Marissa. "You're riding with her," he said. "We'll process the suspects and meet you at the hospital." Marissa nodded, climbing into the ambulance and taking the seat beside the stretcher. The doors closed and the vehicle pulled away, sirens cutting through the night air. Inside the fluorescent-lit corridor of the regional hospital, nurses moved efficiently as the emergency room prepared for Rowan's intake. Officer Reyes had arrived ahead to clear a space, and Dr. Anjali Patel, a pediatric trauma specialist, was already reviewing notes. "We'll need to examine her thoroughly," Dr. Patel told Marissa. "It's important we document her condition immediately." "Can I stay?" Marissa asked. "Yes, but please allow us space for certain parts," the doctor replied. As the team began their work, Marissa was asked to wait just outside. She paced the corridor, arms crossed tightly over her chest, every instinct telling her to barge back in. Officer Reyes remained nearby, keeping watch. After what felt like hours, Dr. Patel appeared in the doorway. "You can come in now." Marissa stepped into the room. Rowan lay on a hospital bed, and 4 drip attached to her arm, her small body dwarfed by the starched white sheets. Her eyes fluttered open. "Mom," she murmured. "I'm here, sweetheart, Marissa said, taking her hand. "You're okay now." Dr. Patel approached, her face kind but serious. "Mrs. Doyle, we've completed our initial examination. Rowan is suffering from acute malnutrition. She's significantly underweight for her age. There are also multiple bruises on her back and legs consistent with physical discipline using a narrow object. Her wrists and ankles show marks from prolonged restraint, possibly with plastic ties or even chains." Marissa's heart ached. "What else?" "She's sensitive to light," Dr. Patel continued. "It aligns with repeated exposure to photography flashes. She's also expressed a fear of cameras, suggesting she may have been forced into inappropriate modeling. We're testing for sedatives in her blood. The recovery will take time, both physically and emotionally." Marissa nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "She'll get everything she needs. I'll make sure of it." "She's a resilient child," the doctor said, "but she'll need therapy, specialized long-term care." After the doctor left, Marissa sat at Rowan's bedside, holding her hand through the night. Rowan drifted in and out of restless sleep, sometimes mumbling fragmented words, pictures, mask, hiding. Marissa gently stroked her hair, whispering reassurances. As dawn broke and sunlight spilled across the floor, Alvarez entered quietly, removing his hat. Marissa rose, stepping into the hallway to speak. "She's stable," she said, "but she's been through hell." Alvarez nodded grimly. "Carnes isn't talking, but Evans, his wife, is. She's trying to cut a deal. Claims she couldn't live with the guilt anymore." Marissa narrowed her eyes. "She helped him keep my daughter for 10 months. She doesn't get to wash that away." "She won't walk free," Alvarez assured her. "But with her help, we're uncovering more. This wasn't just them. There's a network. Carnes handled the children. Others handled production and distribution of illicit materials." Marissa felt her stomach churn. "How many?" "At least 10 more children," Alvarez said. "We've located a property on Cedar Island registered under a shell company linked to Carnes. Federal agents are moving in now." "How did he take them?" Marissa asked. "How did he get Eliza and Rowan off that ship without anyone noticing?" Alvarez took a breath. "Evans says Carnes boarded under a fake name. He had a prepaid card, burner phone, and wore a stolen maintenance uniform. He watched your daughters during the magician's show. Later, he approached them with a magic trick, gained their trust, led them into a crew-only hallway, then used a jamming device to disable a nearby camera. He planned it," Marissa whispered. "Months ahead. He likely scouted your family before the cruise," Alvarez said. "Evans recalled him talking about a pair of twins he saw in Boulder, perfect subjects," he said. Marissa clenched her fists. "And Eliza?" Alvarez's expression darkened. "Evans wasn't present for that part. But Carnes told her he couldn't handle both. His original partner backed out when he realized they were twins. So Carnes chose. He smothered Eliza. Quiet. No blood. Then wrapped her in her clothes, placed her in the suitcase, and dumped it overboard from a waist deck." Marissa turned away, fighting sobs. "How did he get Rowan off the ship?" "Kept her drugged and hidden in his cabin's bathroom. When they docked in Key West, he dressed her up, used sunglasses, a wig, different clothes. Slipped off during the morning crowd." "They were so close," Marissa whispered. "I was on the same ship." Alvarez put a hand on her shoulder. "You did everything right. You called for help. You searched. You never gave up. That's why she's alive." Marissa looked through the window at Rowan's sleeping form. "They need to pay. And those magazines burn them all. No child should live with that horror." "We're working with federal agencies," Alvarez said. "This case is expanding. But I promise Carnes and Evans won't see freedom again." "Thank you," Marissa said, "for not giving up on her." Alvarez gave a nod, then stepped away to continue coordination. Marissa returned to Rowan's side. Her daughter stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Mom." "Yes, baby," Marissa said softly. "I'm here." Rowan's voice trembled. "Eliza's gone, isn't she?" Marissa's breath caught. "Yes, sweetheart. The bad man hurt her. But you're safe now." "He said she was gone," Rowan whispered. "But I hoped maybe she was hiding like me." "I looked every day," Marissa said, her own tears falling. "For both of you." Rowan's hand clutched hers. "I was so scared. They made me stand still. Took pictures. Said they'd hurt you if I ran." "You don't have to be scared anymore," Marissa said. "They'll never touch you again." For a long moment, mother and daughter held each other in silence, both mourning and healing. Eventually, the medication eased Rowan back into sleep. Marissa laid her gently on the pillow and noticed something, a small scar near her daughter's hairline. A visible mark from an invisible trauma, but also a reminder of her strength. They would mourn Eliza. They would fight for justice. And one day they would heal. The courtroom buzzed with a tense energy as Marissa Doyle took her seat behind the prosecution's table. The trial of Douglas Carnes and Kathy Evans had drawn national attention, with reporters and spectators filling every available seat. Marissa's heart pounded as she glanced at the defendants, their expression stoic. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. The prosecutor began by outlining the charges: kidnapping, child endangerment, and murder. Evidence was presented meticulously, including the suitcase that had held Eliza's remains and the lighter bearing the initials K. Witnesses testified about the discovery of the suitcase on Ocracoke Island and the subsequent investigation that led to the arrest of Carnes and Evans. Marissa listened intently, her emotions a mix of grief and determination. When it was her turn to testify, she took a deep breath and approached the stand. She recounted the harrowing experience of her daughter's disappearance, the agonizing months of uncertainty, and the eventual discovery of Eliza's body. Her voice trembled as she described the moment she reunited with Rowan, who had been found alive but traumatized. The defense attempted to cast doubt on the prosecution's case, suggesting that Evans had been coerced by Carnes and was not an active participant in the crimes. However, the prosecution countered with evidence of Evans's involvement in the planning and execution of the abductions. As the trial progressed, the jury heard from experts in forensic psychology who detailed the psychological impact of the trauma on Rowan. They explained how the prolonged captivity and abuse had left lasting scars. Rowan's recorded testimony, given in a safe environment, was played for the court. Her words painted a chilling picture of the conditions she endured and the threat she faced. The jury deliberated for several days before returning with a verdict: guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Carnes to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, and Evans to a lengthy prison term. Marissa felt a sense of closure, knowing that justice had been served. However, the pain of losing Eliza remained, a wound that time could not heal. She focused on helping Rowan recover, attending therapy sessions together and rebuilding their lives. The community rallied around them, offering support and compassion. Marissa became an advocate for missing children, sharing her story to raise awareness and prevent similar tragedies. Through her efforts, she found a renewed sense of purpose, honoring Eliza's memory by fighting for the safety of others. It had been just 3 days since the verdict was read aloud in court, echoing through the chamber like a gavel striking through years of horror. Douglas Carnes had been taken into maximum security custody immediately, and Kathy Evans, despite her plea for leniency, was sentenced to 40 years for her participation and failure to intervene. But for Marissa, it wasn't over. Not even close. That morning, just as she finished helping Rowan brush her hair shorter now, But slowly growing back, Detective Alvarez called with news that stopped her breath mid-sentence. "We raided the Cedar Island property," he said. "The one Evans mentioned during her cooperation interviews." Marissa tightened her grip on the phone. "Did you find them?" "3 children," Alvarez confirmed. "All alive. Malnourished. Scared. But alive. We're moving them to a temporary care facility while we identify and contact families." Marissa sank into the kitchen chair, tears welling in her eyes. 3 more. "And more materials," Alvarez added. "Photos, equipment, lists of names. We're handing it all to the FBI." "I want to see it," she said suddenly. Alvarez paused. "The property?" "Yes. I need to see it for myself. Where he kept them. Where he might have taken Rowan, even if just temporarily. I need to understand." By late afternoon, she was on a boat with Alvarez and 2 local officers, approaching Cedar Island under heavy skies. The wind whipped across the deck, and waves slapped against the hull as though resisting their arrival. The island itself was overgrown and unwelcoming, with gnarled trees and thick brush growing right to the shoreline. The structure they approached was a single-story wooden cabin with boarded-up windows and a sagging porch, almost invisible from the water until they were nearly upon it. "It's isolated," one officer said, steering them through the narrow dock. "Hard to find unless you knew what you were looking for." As they stepped onto the damp soil, Marissa felt a shiver crawl up her spine. The cabin looked abandoned, yet the interior had told a different story when investigators first entered. Alvarez led the way through the front door, which still bore the mark of forced entry. The air inside was musty, tainted with the metallic scent of old fear. Flashlights illuminated rooms that were bare except for sleeping mats, bolted cabinets, and a few broken toys scattered on the floor. "They slept here?" Marissa asked, voice shaking. Alvarez nodded grimly. The 3 kids were in the back room, locked in. One of them said they hadn't seen daylight in weeks. They entered that room. A tiny window had been nailed shut, the wallpaper peeled in strips, and the only light came from the flashlights in their hands. On the walls were faded cartoon posters, clumsy attempts to make the space child-friendly. "He tried to make it seem like a playroom," Marissa murmured. "But it's a prison." "Exactly," Alvarez said. He stepped toward a closet in the corner and opened it. Inside were several clear plastic storage bins, each labeled in marker. Shoes, photos, medical. Marissa hesitated, then reached for the bin marked photos. "We already cataloged everything," Alvarez warned. "You don't have to see. I need to," she said. Inside were dozens of Polaroids and printed pictures, many in sealed evidence bags. She stopped when she saw a familiar pair of eyes. "That's Rowan," she whispered. "That's the pink sweater I packed for the cruise." Alvarez gently pulled the photo away and added it to a smaller bag. "We'll take all of these. For the federal team." "Did you find anything with Eliza?" Marissa asked. Alvarez didn't answer right away. He walked to the other side of the room and picked up a different bin. Inside was a bundle of paper drawings and a single cloth headband, red with a white bow. Marissa inhaled sharply. That was Eliza's. She wore it the day we boarded the ship. She reached for it with trembling fingers, then drew her hand back. "I can't. I don't want to damage the evidence." Alvarez placed it into a fresh evidence bag. "We'll have this tested. It might give us a timeline, confirm whether he had them both here." Marissa stared around the room, overwhelmed by the quiet horror of the place. "They kept them here like animals." "We think it was one of several locations," Alvarez said. He rotated the kids to avoid suspicion. Evans said he sometimes moved them every few weeks. "Did any of the other kids mention Rowan or Eliza?" One of them, a little boy named Jonah, said he remembered a girl with red hair who told him stories about the stars. We think that was Rowan. She'd been here at least once." Marissa closed her eyes, picturing her daughter comforting another child, even while imprisoned. "We need to shut down every part of this network," she said. "Every name on every list. Every storage bin. Burn it all." "That's what we're doing," Alvarez said. "But it's going to be a long process." "Then let's make it loud," she replied. "Let's make sure the world hears it." When they returned to the boat, the sun had dipped below the horizon. The water reflected the bruised tones of the sky, as if the world itself mourned what had happened here. Back at the harbor, Marissa sat quietly, holding the evidence bag with Eliza's headband in her lap. She knew that justice didn't bring her daughter back. It didn't erase what had been done to Rowan, but it gave weight to their suffering. It gave it shape. And maybe, just maybe, it would prevent another parent from feeling this grief. As she looked up at the stars overhead, clear now that the sky had darkened, she whispered a promise into the wind. "I'll keep fighting. For you. For Rowan. For the ones still lost." And the waves, relentless and eternal, seemed to whisper back, carrying her vow into the night. The morning sun filtered through the curtains as Marissa sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee growing cold in her hands. Rowan was still asleep upstairs, her breathing finally steady after another restless night. The house was quiet, but Marissa's mind was anything but. The events of the past months replayed in her thoughts: the disappearance, the search, the trial, and the haunting visit to Cedar Island. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from Detective Alvarez. "You might want to come by the station. Something came in the mail for you." Marissa's heart skipped a beat. She quickly got dressed, leaving a note for Rowan in case she woke up, and drove to the police station. Alvarez met her at the front desk, holding a plain envelope. "This arrived this morning," he said. "No return address, but it's postmarked from Virginia Beach." Marissa took the envelope, her fingers trembling. She opened it carefully, revealing a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. "You found one, but there are more. Look deeper." Marissa stared at the note, her mind racing. Carnes?" she asked. Alvarez nodded. "Possibly, but he's in custody, and all mail is monitored. It's unlikely he sent this." "Then who?" "That's what we're trying to figure out. The handwriting doesn't match Carnes or Evans. It could be someone else involved." Marissa felt a chill run down her spine. "What does it mean you found one, but there are more?" "It suggests there are other victims, other locations. We need to investigate further." Over the next few days, Marissa worked closely with Alvarez and the FBI, combing through the evidence collected from Cedar Island and other properties linked to Carnes. They discovered encrypted files on a hidden hard drive, containing images and videos of other children. Some had been identified and rescued, but others remained missing. One video stood out, a recording of a young girl no older than 5, in a room that didn't match any of the known locations. The background showed a distinctive wallpaper pattern, a pattern that matched a motel in Norfolk, Virginia. A team was dispatched immediately. The motel manager confirmed that a man matching Carnes' description had rented a room there months ago, using a fake ID. Security footage showed him entering with a child, but there was no record of them checking out. A search of the room revealed traces of DNA matching the girl in the video, but no sign of her current whereabouts. The trail had gone cold. Marissa couldn't shake the feeling that the note was a taunt, a challenge to keep digging. She began to receive more letters, each with cryptic messages and clues pointing to different locations across Virginia. Some led to abandoned buildings, others to empty lots. Each time, they found evidence of past occupancy: children's toys, clothing, drawings, but no people. The media caught wind of the developments. dubbing the unknown sender the watcher. Speculation ran rampant. Was it a former accomplice of Karn's? A vigilante trying to help? Or someone playing a twisted game? Marissa felt the weight of the investigation pressing down on her. She wanted to focus on helping Rowan heal, but the letters kept pulling her back in. She couldn't ignore them, not when there were still children out there, possibly suffering. One evening, as she sat in her living room, another envelope slid under her front door. She rushed to open it, finding a photograph inside. It was a picture of Rowan taken during her captivity, with a note on the back. She was lucky. Others weren't. Keep looking. Marissa's hands shook as she held the photo. She realized that whoever was sending these messages had been watching her family closely. The threat wasn't over. She contacted Alvarez immediately, and a security detail was assigned to her home. But the letters kept coming, each one more disturbing than the last. Marissa knew she had to stay strong, for Rowan and for the other children still missing. She vowed to continue the search, no matter how long it took, until every last victim was found and the watcher was unmasked. 3 weeks had passed since the last letter arrived, and each day that passed without a new envelope brought only temporary relief. Marissa knew it wasn't over, not yet. The messages had grown eerily specific, referencing items only someone close to the case or close to her family could possibly know. The photograph of Rowan, taken during captivity, had been the tipping point. The FBI's behavioral analysis team concluded that the sender had likely been involved directly, perhaps not as a primary actor like Karn's, but as an observer or worse, an archivist, someone who documented and curated the horror. On a drizzly Thursday morning, a new envelope arrived. This one bore no postmark. It had been hand-delivered, slipped between the screen and front door sometime during the night. Marissa retrieved it with gloves, placing it into a plastic evidence bag as instructed by investigators. Inside was a single map, an overhead satellite image printed in color. A red marker circled a cluster of trees beside a weathered barn in a rural part of Goochland County. Beneath the image was a simple line of text, typed this time. This was one of his favorite places. Before the orchard burned. Marissa's breath caught. She had heard rumors about a fire in that area the previous year, a suspicious blaze that destroyed a historic apple orchard and an old farmhouse. The case had gone cold, no suspects ever named. The site, now abandoned and overgrown, had never been searched thoroughly, at least not as part of any investigation related to Karn's. Alvarez met her at the station just an hour later. "We're sending a forensic team," he said. "We'll treat this as credible. We don't know who's feeding you these clues, but so far, they've been leading us closer, not further." Marissa nodded, grateful for the support, even as dread coiled in her gut. "I want to be there," she said. "This might be the last piece. I need to be there when it's found." With permission from the lead investigator and a protective vest strapped beneath her jacket, Marissa rode with Alvarez and the team into the hills. The drive was quiet, tension crackling between the conversations. Rain pattered lightly on the windshield. As they turned onto the gravel road that led to the remains of the orchard, Marissa felt her heart rate spike. The barn, though partially collapsed, was still standing. Trees around it bore blackened bark and withered limbs, scars from the fire that had ripped through the property months before. The air was heavy with damp earth and something else, an acidic edge that made her skin crawl. The team set up perimeter lights and began the slow, painstaking process of searching the grounds. Cadaver dogs were brought in, sweeping the fields in methodical arcs. Alvarez stayed close to Marissa, watching the team's work in coordinated silence. Hours passed. Then, just after 2 p.m., a low bark rang out from the northern edge of the property. One of the handlers raised a hand, calling for backup. The rest of the team converged. Marissa was held back by protocol, but her eyes were locked on the spot. It was near the edge of the orchard, where the tree line met a slope leading down toward a creek. Beneath a shallow layer of soil and fire-damaged debris, they found what remained of a concealed hatch metal, rusted but intact. With effort, they pried it open. A narrow staircase led underground. The air that rose up from the opening was stale and thick with mold. Lights were lowered first, followed by two officers in protective gear. Minutes ticked by before one of them emerged again. His face was pale, eyes wide. "It's a cellar," he said. "Small. Concrete. Looks like it was used recently, maybe before the fire. You need to see this." Marissa was allowed to descend with Alvarez, both of them in masks and gloves. The cellar was barely tall enough to stand in. On one side was a rusted cot with a filthy mattress. Chains hung from a pipe overhead. A crate in the corner held worn clothing, tiny shoes, a stuffed animal melted partially by heat. The far wall was lined with shelving units, each filled with videotapes and labeled folders. "My God," Alvarez muttered. This was his archive. Marissa's knees buckled. She steadied herself against the wall. "He kept trophies," she said, "like some sick museum." As the evidence team began to remove the contents for cataloging, Marissa stepped toward the corner where the stuffed animal sat. It was a bare blue, one ear missing. She remembered it. A child in one of the early missing person cases had clutched it in a photo. A little girl from Norfolk who vanished 2 years prior. "This place connects them," she said aloud. "All of them." "We'll cross-reference everything," Alvarez said. "We'll find them." As they emerged from the hatch, the rain had picked up, soaking the ground. Marissa stood in the orchard, her hair plastered to her face, her boots sinking into mud, but she didn't care. She stared at the trees, the charred remnants of life and fruit and memory. Behind her, officers carried out boxes wrapped in plastic. One step closer to justice. That night, back at the station, as they reviewed initial findings, Alvarez placed a fresh cup of coffee in front of her. "There were names," he said, "in those folders. Dozens. Some matched open cases. Some didn't." "We're going to need more people," Marissa said. "More resources. We need to get louder." "We will," Alvarez promised. "You started something, Marissa. We'll finish it." She nodded slowly. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady. "Let's burn the whole rotten tree. Every branch. Every root." 6 months had passed since the discovery at the burned orchard, and yet for Marissa Doyle, time no longer moved in days or weeks, it moved in names. Every folder recovered from that underground room contained one. Some were scribbled on the back of photographs, others typed meticulously on inventory sheets. Victim codes, initials, ages, locations. In that windowless hell beneath the orchard, the darkness had kept a ledger of suffering. And now it was Marissa's mission to turn every one of those silent entries into a voice heard. With federal support, a multi-state task force had been formed, and Marissa had become an unexpected symbol, part grieving mother, part relentless advocate. She attended hearings, met with senators, and appeared on news programs, her voice always calm, always focused. She didn't flinch from the hard truths, didn't shy away from showing Eliza's photo or recounting what Rowan had endured. "This is not just my story," she said on national television. "This is the story of every child who disappeared and never came back. We owe them more than silence." The movement gained traction. A database was launched. Cases long buried were reopened. A hotline created to cross-check missing children with the orchard evidence received over 2,000 calls in the first month alone. Arrests followed, quiet but steady. Men and women whose names had once lived in the margins of suspicion were now being pulled into the light. Every time a new child was identified from the evidence, Marissa felt a jolt of conflicting emotion. Relief for the families, grief for the confirmation, and a gnawing anger for the years lost. Rowan had begun therapy sessions 3 times a week. Her progress was slow but visible. She no longer startled at every flash of light. She no longer refused to sleep in a room alone. She spoke more about school, about books, about her memories of Eliza. Sometimes she drew pictures, and sometimes she asked questions Marissa didn't yet know how to answer. Why did they choose us? Will they come back? Did Eliza cry? And Marissa would take a breath, kneel down, and say the only truths she could offer. Because some people are broken inside. No, they won't. Yes. But she was never alone. One afternoon, Rowan placed a drawing in Marissa's lap. It showed 2 girls under a starry sky, one in a red shirt, the other in blue, holding hands with a caption, "Together again someday." Marissa felt tears rise as she pulled her daughter into her arms. "She'd be proud of you," she whispered. "So proud." And somewhere deep inside, she believed it. Detective Alvarez had stayed in close contact. Though visibly more worn from the months of investigation, he remained the same pillar of quiet resolve. They met often, sometimes to exchange updates, sometimes just to sit in silence on Marissa's porch, watching the wind stir the trees. "You know," he said one evening, "we caught another one last week. A woman out of Tennessee had been laundering money from these video sales. Claimed she thought it was just dark web fiction. Turns out she filmed at least 2 clips herself." Marissa's jaw tightened. Did she name others? "A few. It's going to take years. But we're not stopping." "Good," she said. "Because neither am I." In early spring, the orchard land was officially seized by the state. Marissa filed for special permission and was granted the right to purchase the lot for $1. "We couldn't think of a better steward for that ground," the county clerk told her, eyes glistening. With donated funds, she began transforming the space. The charred trees were cleared, replaced by a small memorial grove. 10 new apple trees, one for each known victim from the orchard folders. A plaque stood in the center, engraved simply, "For the lost, the found, and the never forgotten." On the day of its dedication, families from all over the country arrived. Some had children who had survived. Some carried only photos. Rowan stood beside Marissa, wearing a sky blue dress and holding a single red rose. When her turn came to speak, Marissa stepped up to the microphone. "This grove is not just a place of mourning," she said. "It's a promise that their names won't be erased, that their pain will not be buried, that our silence will never protect the guilty again." A hush fell over the crowd as Rowan stepped forward and laid the rose at the base of the plaque. She looked out at the gathering, then back up at her mother. "We're okay now," she said softly. "Right." Marissa knelt, pressing her forehead to her daughter's. "We will be. We're getting there." That night, as they returned home, the sky turned a dusky pink, and the trees shimmered with the last light of day. Marissa tucked Rowan into bed and sat at the window, watching the stars blink into view one by one. She thought of Eliza. She thought of the orchard and the files and the cellar. She thought of every parent still searching, every child still silent. And she promised once more not to stop. Not until every trace of the darkness that tried to steal her family had been turned to light. As the wind whispered through the trees, she heard a creak on the porch. Her heart jumped, but it was only Alvarez, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one without a word, then sat beside her, the quiet between them no longer heavy, but healing. The night deepened. The air was cool. The world still imperfect. But somewhere in that dark, A little girl named Rowan slept peacefully for the first time in a long time with no nightmares, no fear, and a heart still broken, yet beating with the certainty that she was no longer lost. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more real-life inspired mysteries. Let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? And if you believe in hope and healing, type "God help the lost" in the comments below to stand with us.